Okay, so my name is William Bessette. I'm a business owner and entrepreneur. I have owned my own digital marketing and web development agency for about 6 years now. And I also have a travel blog and Instagram and YouTube channel called Floppy Head Adventures that chronicles my travels with my husband all over the world. The castle. It's behind us, see it? And we are now headed to Concon to go to the next place, which is this beautiful resort on the sea. So, yeah. I've run out of words, as I want to do. I'll talk to you when we get there. Well, we're on the bus to Concon, and it is standing room only. As you can see, I can't even turn around. We're off the bus. No well. Okay. We're off the bus, and we're in Concon, and it's beautiful. Check it out. And in 4 minutes, we're going to be at our hotel.
Where did you come up with the idea for the business?
Well, I was a journalist in Las Vegas where I grew up for many years, and right around the time that the Great Recession happened, a little after it, maybe about 8 years ago, I decided to move to the Pacific Northwest from Las Vegas. And at the time I was looking for other journalism jobs, but you know, journalism, internet killed the print media star, so it was very difficult to find journalism jobs at the time. So I got a corporate job for a couple of years, ended up leaving that corporate job, determined to not be a slave to the 9-to-5 office culture. And basically I decided to spend all day every day applying for online content writing jobs, and I ended up getting writing jobs for websites and writing blogs and website content and stuff like that. That ended up leading into me learning about digital marketing and web development, and as I learned about that and I got clients, I transitioned into doing that, and then eventually created my own company called the Brillium Group, and we currently have one web developer on staff and a virtual assistant, and me and my husband Brandon run the business. But that's kind of how I got into it. I leveraged my career in journalism to get online writing jobs, and then I transitioned into doing web development and digital marketing from there, and having my travel blog. And now I really don't even write anymore.
And I always love this story that you sometimes talk about, and when you post about how after you quit your corporate job and you were like really hustling and struggling, trying to string together these freelance writing jobs, and Brandon at the time, who of course you guys were not married back then, was your then boyfriend, live-in boyfriend, and how he was the one kind of bringing home the bacon and you were kind of on unemployment for a while. Like, recap that, because I think that's a cool story for young entrepreneurs to know that it's not always sunshine and daisies, and you weren't always living this fantastic life where you got to gallivant around the world living your best life, right? So I just want you to talk about the humble beginnings and kind of how the struggle started, and how eventually Brandon left the corporate world to jump on board and you guys formed the Brillium Group.
Well, I think the struggle began even before my corporate job. You know, growing up in Las Vegas, struggled with addiction for a lot of my life. I was a real estate investor at probably the worst time you could be a real estate investor in 2007. I ended up losing my house in the recession, and that preceded me moving to the Pacific Northwest. And so that was really where it sort of all began, because I sort of escaped a very unhealthy life to start over in a new place, and I ended up getting that corporate job at a bank doing mortgage banking, which is very ironic considering what had just happened in my life prior to that. And after a year and a half of that, as I mentioned, I couldn't stay doing that. So I left that company, and yes, I was on unemployment for 6 months, and I spent 8 hours a day at the local library as though it were a job, sending out pitches and proposals to websites for online content writing. And I did that for 6 months, and on the last month of my unemployment running out, I was getting ready to go and get a regular job. I was very disheartened. I couldn't understand why nobody was hiring me after all this time and all these hours spent at the library doing this. And Brandon, who at the time had a corporate job, he said to me, take 1 more month and I'm gonna pay for everything, and I'll keep us afloat as long as you keep trying, because I think you can do this. And so we gave it 1 more month, and that 1 more month was the month that I got my first 3 clients. So, and then once that happened, it seemed to just sort of snowball from there. So it was very fascinating, the timing, and to me it really taught me that,
to stay the course.
You can't give up. And it's cliche, right? Don't give up, just do it. Whatever the saying is.
The marathon continues is like what we like to say here at IE Media Group is the marathon continues. So is it safe to say that you are virtually on the brink of giving up, of becoming a small business owner and becoming an entrepreneur? You're virtually on the brink of giving up, but that last boost of encouragement from your significant other is what made you hang in there, and actually that's when your dreams for your business started to come to fruition.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and I almost feel like it happened that way for a reason. I feel like it gave me a greater appreciation for the push and the struggle, and it made me realize, it would have been different if I had gotten my first client within a month, right? Or if I didn't need to struggle, or if the manna from heaven just was flowing immediately. I don't think I would have appreciated what it took to get there quite as much. So in a way, even though at the time I was incredibly stressed out and thought that it wasn't going to happen, the fact that it did happen that way gave me more appreciation for it in the end.
Yeah, because staying the course is ultimately what did it, was your perseverance and that support that you had. So talk a little bit about that, because that must have been an awesome moment to know how much your partner believed in your dream and really gave you that final push where you almost thought you couldn't do it. You were close to the finish line of where you wanted to be, but you almost got discouraged and quit, and then he gave you that final push. So then once you started, obviously, you said you got the first 3 clients within that, I guess, 7th month, as it were. And then how long did it take to be able to grow the business to where it could sustain, and eventually where you and Brandon decided to make the leap of faith where you would sell the majority of all your worldly belongings, and he would quit his corporate job because you guys were now sustaining yourselves on your business income? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you're absolutely right in that. I think that having support is critical in any situation, and I feel very fortunate that I had Brandon in my life to encourage me to continue and to pursue my dreams. He knew that this is what I wanted to do. He knew I didn't want to go back to a corporate environment, not working for myself, and he pushed me, and I needed that, and it was critical. And it's changed our lives ever since. As soon as I got those clients, within about a year and a half, I ramped up the number of clients that I had, and then the following year I took a 4-month work travel trip in Asia with 50 other remote working professionals, and I think too that's the key too, is being able to work remotely. That was one of the dreams. Yeah, I wanted to work for myself. Yeah, I wanted to be an entrepreneur and a business owner, and I wanted to be successful, but more than that, I wanted to be able to do it from anywhere in the world. I don't want to be location dependent. So once I realized that this dream of building a company and working remotely was possible, I proposed to Brandon in Thailand, and within 6 months we had sold everything, our car, our possessions, everything we owned, down to 2 backpacks and 2 carry-on items. And we headed to Lima, Peru. That was December of 2017. And we never looked back. And we went through 23 countries in 2 years. And then recently, about 6 months ago, we decided to settle down in Costa Rica. And we've been living there for about 8 months in a little beach town in the Caribbean. And this is the culmination of everything. And even though I say to myself, I want all the clients and I want all the money and I want all the success, really I sort of feel like I have all the success right now, and that the money and the clients and all of that is actually just an offshoot of my happiness with life. And I'm very grateful for that. I feel like, you know, people say, oh, I paid my dues or what have you. I would say, you know, I lived what I needed to live to get to this point, and I wouldn't change anything. You know, sometimes you say to yourself, what if this had happened differently? Well, if that had happened differently, you wouldn't be where you are today. So even the bad things that had to happen, because otherwise the good things that are happening to you today wouldn't be happening.
So I know we talked about your beginning and how you started off as a freelance writer, and I know you've kind of touched on, but I want to get into a little bit more of Floppy Hat Adventures and the beginning there, and as far as like how that was your segue that led into the Brilliant Group.
So right around the time that I quit my corporate job and started working remotely, about a year later, I took some time to sort of get working remotely under my belt, and right around the time that I went on that work travel trip with those other remote working individuals in Asia, I said, you know, I want to chronicle my adventure, my time on this trip, and I created a blog called Floppy Hat Adventures. At the time, it was more just me chronicling my travels through Asia, and it was about 4 months. It was January of 2017 till May of 2017 that I spent 4 months in Asia with a group called Remote Year, and I traveled with some remote working professionals while Brandon stayed home at his 9-to-5 job and held down the fort. And you know, the whole reason for me to do this was to see what was possible with this lifestyle for us. And at the end of the trip, as a way of convincing Brandon to let me do it to begin with, I told him I would bring him to Thailand, and we would fly him out there for the end of the trip, and we'd go to Japan and Thailand, and he could have a couple weeks vacation at the end of the trip, and then we would come home together. What he did not realize is that I had been proposing to him for 4 months, since the beginning of the trip. Since before I went, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So at the end, before we left, I sprung a flash mob dance crew proposal on him in Bangkok, Thailand. And it was probably one of the most epic moments in our lives. It's still, we've seen the video 300 times and we still get teary-eyed watching it. So it was pretty awesome.
Hell yeah! I can't stay away from you too long. Even if I do, I'll always call. Checking on you, make sure you're okay. Be the one to brighten up your day. Yeah, yeah. And the point of it all, I love you. And the point of it all, I love you. And the point of it all, I love you. And the point of it all, I love you. Yeah. I can't stay away too long. Why don't you stay around for a while? And the point of it all, and the point of it all. Oh my God! What's the answer? Yes!
Wow, and when we talk about epic, that proposal takes the cake. I get teary-eyed every time I watch it as well. I believe that it's every person's dream to be proposed to in that fashion with that type of grandiosity, if you will.
My straight male friends are very mad at me because they tell me that I've set the bar too high.
Oh yes.
For them.
Set the bar very high is an understatement because that was very epic. So at that point, you proposed and he accepted. Clearly, we can see that in the video. And obviously you guys are married today, so that part worked out. But you did say before we cut to the video that that was kind of where the inception of Floppy Hat Adventures kind of really took off. You guys became more vested in it and really decided to make it a brand.
Right. Well, and see, in the beginning, I was a little hesitant on bringing Brandon to the front of it. And to be honest, it was my own misgivings or my own feelings about how people might perceive, Brandon being a part of it. I was insecure about adding him to the channel for me. People might think of us being gay, or whether it's the interracial factor. I don't know. There's any number of things these days that people can have an issue with. But after I proposed to him and we decided we were to travel, which wasn't easy, by the way. He had been at his career corporate job for 6 years. He was in management. He made good money. He liked it there. It wasn't easy. So the first time I asked him, he said no. And then I let it go for a couple of months. And one day he came home from work and he'd had a really bad day, and we were having dinner, and he kind of looked up to me and he said, what were you saying about me quitting and us selling everything and traveling, and that was all the opening I needed. I basically just picked at it. I said, we can do this, and you can quit everything, and we're gonna travel the world and be these crazy adventurers, and it's just gonna be awesome. Or we can stay here in our apartment and do the same thing every day and look at the same scenery every day. and he still wasn't quite there. It was just one day he came home randomly and was like, I want to quit. I'm ready to do this. And so that was probably around September of 2017. By November, he put in his notice, and by December, we had gotten married at the courthouse, and by mid-December, we had sold everything and left. And that was when I really decided to bring him into Floppy Hat Adventures, and I did feel some measure of shame, because I did introduce him at that point, and I changed our logo to reflect more of a duality, instead of just a face of me, it's a guy in a hat, who's there. There's a black and white dichotomy there on the logo. So we brought him in, we changed the logo, and we sort of reintroduced him, and I felt very apologetic for sort of not talking about him and thinking that our audience might have a problem. It was incredibly short-sighted on my part. And since he's become a part of Floppy Hat Adventures, we're more popular than ever. We give out free resort stays every month. Our channels are growing rapidly. We have 16,000 followers on Instagram, and we're really doing very well with it. I would love for one day Floppy Hat Adventures to take over the web development and digital marketing business, as that is where I want my entrepreneurism to go. I want my blog and my travel brand, our travel brand, I should say, to eclipse the digital marketing and web development business, so that we can really truly get paid to travel, just like I used to get paid to eat food and go to plays. So that's the goal.